Malima, a beautiful dark girl, always smiling. But there is a big secret about her no one in the village knew about. Malima, the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Oji, their only daughter. From childhood, people spoke about her beauty as though it was something heavenly. As Malima grew older, her beauty became the talk of the neighboring villages. But beauty was not the only thing that defied her. Malima was very stubborn. Very stubborn. You are welcome to Tales by Grandma. Malima lived in the village of Umike. She hated being told what to do. While other girls helped their mother at home to prepare for marriage, Malima wandered freely through the village paths, laughing loudly, teasing young men and ignoring everyone in giving to her. Malima, her mother would often say, "A woman's dignity is her crown. Protect it carefully, Malima. Listen to me for once, this girl." But Malima would roll her eyes and walk away. Inside her heart lived a hunger she did not understand. She loved attention. She loved being desired. She loved knowing she could make powerful men lose control simply by smiling at them. At 16, she secretly began meeting young men at the edge of the forest. At 17, married men started visiting their compound under foolish excuses. At 18, hunters returned from forest stopped by just to see her face. Strong warriors who feared nothing became weak around Malima. Even wealthy farmers, respected elders, and traveling traders fought silently for her attention. The village women hated her. The men desired her so much. And Malima enjoyed every moment of it. Rumor always spread through Umike about Malima, but she never cared. She was seen with Chinedu the hunter near the river. No, it was Obinna the warrior. I heard she spent the night in Chief Duru's bar. That girl will bring shame to her parents. Every morning, whispers follows her footsteps. But she walked proudly through the market with beads around her waist and confidence in her eyes. Sometimes she laughed when women insulted her. "I don't care. You people can say anything you want. I am Malima, the beautiful young lady." "Let them talk," she would tell herself. What Malima failed to understand was that pressure often works hand in hand with consequences, and consequences always arrive quietly. One rainy evening, Malima sat alone inside her room while sudden dizziness gripped her. She pressed her hand against her stomach. Fear crawled slowly into her chest. For weeks, she had ignored the signs. Her monthly period had stopped. Her body felt weak every morning. Certain smells make her sick. That night, Malima finally understood the truth. She was pregnant. She did not know who the father was. Too many men had passed through her secret life. The hunter, the warrior, the married farmer, the trader from a distant village. Her breathing became heavy. "What will I do?" she whispered to herself. For the first time in her life, fear silenced her pride. Every morning, she woke up with anxiety tightening around her chest. She wrapped loose clothing around her body to hide the slight pregnancy of her tummy. Whenever village women stared at her too long, her heart pounded with terror. She avoided gatherings. She stopped visiting the market often. Her laughter that once followed her everywhere slowly disappeared. But secrets rarely stay hidden for long in a small village. One afternoon, while women washed clothes beside the river, two girls said loudly as Malima passed. "She looked different. Do you notice it?" "Yes, her face is fuller. Do you think she's carrying a child?" Malima pretended not to hear them, but her hands trembled all the way home. She sat alone outside their hut, thinking what to do. For the first time, Malima felt trapped in her own world. If the villagers discovered her pregnancy, disgrace would fall upon her parents. Her father would become the laughingstock of Umike. Her mother's heart would break, and the elders would never allow her to walk freely again. Desperation forced her mind towards something dangerous. Late the night, she entered her parents' room. With fake sadness on her face, her mother looked up immediately. "Malima, what is wrong?" Malima lowered her eyes. "I received a message from grandmother," she said. Mrs. Oje frowned. "Which grandmother, Malima?" "My mother," Malima replied quickly. "She is old and lonely now. She asked me to come stay with her for some time and help take care of her. Mr. Oji sat up immediately. "For how long?" Malima swallowed hard. She said maybe a year. Mrs. Oji exchanged glances with her husband in surprise. Grandmother Ngozi lived in a distant riverside settled several miles away. She had grown weak with age, and it was not impossible that she might ask for company. Mr. Oji sighed. "If your grandmother truly needs help, then you should go." Guilt stabbed Malima's heart deeply. Her mother smiled gently. "She will be happy to see you, my daughter. Perhaps the quiet life there will help you settle down." Malima forced a fake smile on her face. "Yes, mother." 3 days later, preparation began. Mrs. Oji packed wrappers, dry fish, palm oil, and yam flour for the journey. Some women secretly seemed relieved that she was leaving the village. On the morning of her departure, Mr. Oji walked beside his daughter carrying a small basket. "Take care of yourself," he said. "I will, father. And greet your grandmother well." "I will." The light burned inside her chest. As Malima walked away from Umike, she did not look back for a second. The journey lasted many hours. She traveled through forests filled with cries of birds and insects. Grandmother Ngozi was shocked to see her. "Malima," the old woman exclaimed, "what brings you here?" Malima quickly created another lie. "My parents thought I should stay with you for some time and help around the house." The old woman smiled warmly. "Well, you are welcome." Grandmother Ngozi lived alone in a small hut beside a narrow river surrounded by thick vegetation. At first, Malima found comfort in the isolation. Nobody there knew her secrets. Nobody questioned her swollen stomach. Months passed slowly. The pregnancy grew heavier. At night, she lay awake listening to frogs croaking near the water, while fear consumed her thoughts. Sometimes she placed her hands on her stomach and felt the baby move. The tiny movements awakened strange emotions inside her. Part of her felt tenderness, another part felt anger. This child represents shame, disgrace, punishment. Whenever grandmother Ngozi spoke excitedly about someday seeing her own great-grandchild, Malima forced a weak smile while guilt tightened around her throat. Labor pain came and seized Malima violently. Grandmother rushed to help her. "What is happening?" the old woman cried. The truth finally exploded into the open. Malima gave birth to a baby boy. The child cried loudly the moment he entered the world. Grandmother Ngozi stared at the baby boy in disbelief. "You came here because of this," she said. Malima turned away in shame. The old woman's face carried disappointment, sadness, and pity. "Are your parents aware that you hid it from them?" But despite everything, she wrapped the child carefully in clothes. "He is innocent," she said quietly. The child had a soft dark skin and tiny fingers. For a brief moment, Malima looked into the child's eyes, and something shifted inside her, but fear remained stronger than love. Much stronger. Motherhood did not bring peace to Malima. Instead, it deepened her fear. Every cry of the child reminded her of disgrace waiting beyond the village borders. She feared her parents discovering the truth. She feared the villagers mocking her. She feared living the rest of her life as an unmarried woman carrying shame on her head. Most of all, she feared responsibility. Grandmother Ngozi tried her best to care for the child. "He needs you," the old woman would say. But Malima remained emotionally distant. She carried the baby with cold hands. She fed him without tenderness. Sometimes she stared at him silently for long periods. lost inside terrible thoughts. The child, unaware of the darkness surrounding its existence, continued growing. 3 weeks after his birth, something happened. Grandmother Ngozi slept early because of exhaustion. Malima remained awake. The baby lay beside her, wrapped in clothes. His small chest rose and fell peacefully. For a long time, Malima stared at him. Then slowly, something terrible formed inside her mind. If he disappeared, she whispered to herself, everything will return to normal. Tears gathered in her eyes, but fear and selfishness hid in her heart. She picked up the sleeping child and ran outside. Under the heavy rain, that night looked cursed. Malima walked through the muddy path carrying the child close to her chest. When she finally reached the bridge, she stopped. The water below flowed violently. The child suddenly woke and began to cry softly. His tiny finger touched her arms. For one brief moment, Malima hesitated. Her heart pounded painfully. She looked around, no one was there. Only darkness, only rain, only the sound of rushing water. Then, with a trembled hands and a soul consumed by fear, Malima lowered the child into the raging river. Oh my God. The crying vanished instantly. The water swallowed him. Malima stood still for a moment. Her body shook violently in fear. She stared into the dark water as though expecting the child to rise again. But nothing returned. The river carried the secrets away into the night. The cold emptiness entered her heart. She stumbled back towards the hut, feeling numb. When Grandmother Ngozi woke the next morning and discovered the child missing, panic spread through the house. Where is the baby? She cried. Malima pretended ignorance. I don't know. Together they searched the area. Then villagers discovered pieces of clothes cut near the river bank. Grandmother Ngozi collapsed in horror. The river took him, she whispered. Malima remained silent. That day, the old woman cried endlessly, but Malima buried the truth deep within herself. Weeks later, she returned to Umuike. Her parents welcomed her joyfully. You have grown calmer, Mrs. Orji observed happily. Malima forced a smile. Yes, mother. Nobody suspected anything. Then how is my mother? Grandma Ngozi. She smiled and said, Grandma is fine. The villager accepted her return without much questioning. But deep inside Malima's soul, a big secret remained alive. Sometimes dreamed of water. Sometimes she heard the baby crying in the distance. Sometimes she woke sweating after seeing tiny hands disappearing under dark waves. But during the day, she pretended everything was normal. And slowly, the village forgot. Only the river remembered her secrets. 5 years passed. The reckless fire of Malima's youth slowly faded on the weight of adulthood. She became restless, more reserved. People assumed maturity had finally entered her life. Many men still desire her beauty, but Malima now behaved carefully. Inside her heart lived a constant fear that refused to disappear. Whenever children laughed around her, guilt stirred painfully within her chest. Whenever mothers carried babies on their back, she looked away. Still, life moved forward. One season, a wealthy farmer, Eze, arrived in Umuike seeking a wife. Eze was respected across many villages. He owned vast farmlands filled with yam, maize and cassava. Unlike many wealthy men, Eze was gentle. He spoke calmly and carried himself with dignity. When he first saw Malima during a village festival, he became captivated. She wore a blue wrapper decorated with white patterns, and coral beads rested around her neck. Though years had passed, her beauty remained powerful. Eze approached Mr. Orji formally. I wish to marry your daughter. Mr. Orji felt honor. At last, he believed stability had come into Malima's life. Marriage preparation began immediately. The village celebrated for days. Goats and cows were slaughtered. Palm wine was not left behind. Drums echoed through the night while dancers danced very hard to entertain the guests. Women admired Malima's beauty. Men envied Eze's fortune. Nobody knew the darkness hidden inside the bride's past. On her wedding day, sunlight covered Umuike warmly. Malima sat quietly while elderly women decorated her with beads and scented oils. Her mother smiled proudly. "You are finally becoming a wife. Ah, I thank God for you, my daughter." Malima nodded. But inside, fear still slept inside her happiness. She wondered if God truly forgot human sins or if punishment simply waited patiently. After the marriage, Malima moved into Eze's large compound. Her new life seems blessed. Servant walks around the house. Food remained abundant. Eze treated her with kindness and respect. For the first time, Malima experienced peace. But that peace did not last for long. Villagers began to whisper slowly. "She has not conceived. At this point, she should have children. Perhaps something is wrong." At first, Malima always ignored the comments, but gradually concern entered her marriage. Eze remained patient. "It will happen," he assured her. But every passing year deepens Marima's anxiety. Women who married after her already carry babies on their backs. Young children ran around neighboring compound, yet her womb remained empty. The same woman who once feared pregnancy now prayed desperately for a child. Traditional healers gave her herbs. Prophets prayed for her. Elders recommended sacrifice. Nothing changed. At night, Malima cried silently beside her sleeping husband. And slowly, the big memories she had buried for years began returning. The bridge, the river, the crying child, the tiny fingers. Malima stood outside watching flood water rush across the earth. Suddenly, she heard the baby crying. She spun around in terror, but there was nobody. Only rain, only memory. Guilt she has hidden for 20 years finally rose completely from the darkness. And for the first time, Malima realized something terrifying. She had never escaped her sin. It had simply been waiting. 20 good years after the river swallowed her child, Malima's heart became a battlefield. Outwardly, she still appeared gracefully and wealthy. Servants respected her. Villagers greeted her politely. Her husband loved her deeply. But inside her soul, peace no longer existed. Sleep abandoned her long time ago. Every night she battled terrible dreams. Sometimes she saw a little boy standing beside the river with water dripping from his body. Sometimes she heard footsteps outside her room followed by the sound of a child crying softly. Other nights she dreams of drumming. She would wake gasping for breath while sweat covered her body. Eze noticed the change. "You are troubled," he told her one morning. "I am fine," she lied. But she was not fine. The burden of guilt has become unbearable. One bright afternoon, while women gathered under the large mango tree, discussing family matters, that is the Munyedi meeting, co-wives meeting. An elderly woman spoke words that pierced Malima's like a knife. "A child never disappeared before God," the old woman said. "The earth remembers innocent blood." Malima's hand trembled. Her mind immediately returned to the river. Did she saw me the night I threw my child into the river? Does she know my big secret? She locked herself inside her room and cried for hours. She remembered the baby face, the helpless crying, the storm, the bridge. For 20 years, she had convinced herself that forgetting was possible. But memory is like a seed buried beneath the soil. Given enough time, it grows back. And now the root of her past wrapped tightly around her chest. Malima traveled secretly to visit grandmother Ngozi. The old woman had become extremely weak with age. Her hair has turned completely white and deep wrinkles covered her face. When she saw Malima standing at the doorway, sadness filled her eyes. "You finally came," Grandma Ngozi angrily said. Malima knelt before her. Tears immediately rolled down her cheek. "Grandmother," the old woman studied her silence. "For many years, I prayed that one day your heart will bring you back here." Marima broke down completely in tears. "I cannot sleep anymore," she cried. "I hear him every night." Grandmother Ngozi closed her eyes painfully. I knew the river did not take that child on its own, Malima, my granddaughter. The old woman continued speaking. A mother knows many things even without saying them. I was afraid, Marima spoke. And because of fear, you became wicked, Grandmother Ngozi replied. Malima lowered her head in shame. I have no child now. Perhaps I believe this is punishment. The old woman sighed deeply, looking at her. Punishment is not always fire from heaven. Sometimes punishment is the wound a person carried inside for the rest of their life. The words shattered Malima completely. She remained with her grandmother for several days. During that time, memories flooded her mind endlessly. She remembered her youthful arrogance, the men, the lies, the selfishness, and above all, the innocent child who never received a chance to live. On the third day of her visit, Grandmother Ngozi spoke again. You cannot change the past, she said quietly, but you must face it honestly before you die. Those words followed Malima back to Umuike. For days, she struggled internally. Confession could destroy her marriage. Her husband might hate her. The village could reject her. Her parents would suffer shame. Yet silence was killing her slowly. As children played nearby, laughing joyfully, Malima suddenly imagined what her son might have looked like at 20 years old. Would he have resembled her? Would he have resembled her? Would he have become a farmer like Eze? Would he have called her mother? The grief struck her so deeply that she collapsed crying beside the river. The villagers nearby stared in confusion, but Malima no longer cared. The walls protecting her secret had finally begun to break. For weeks, Malima lived like a shadow wandering through her own home. She barely ate, she barely spoke. Her eyes carried constant sadness that frightened even the servants. Eze watched helplessly as his wife slowly disappeared beneath invisible pain. One evening after dinner, he sat beside her under the moonlight. The night was calm, very calm. Then they could hear the song of the crickets near the bush. Tell me what is destroying you, Eze said to her. Marima stared, but she could not speak. For a long time, only the sound of insects filled the air. Then tears slowly rolled down her face. There is something terrible I have hidden for many years. Eze couldn't understand. What is it, Malima? Malima's hands trembled. Her voice became weak. Before I married you, before I even understood life, I became pregnant. Eze looked in confusion. Pregnant. Malima continued speaking through tears. I lied to my parents and left the village. I gave birth to a baby boy. Eze continued staring at her. Where is the child? He asked. Malima closed her eyes. The next words nearly destroyed her. I threw him into the river. Eze stared at her in disbelief and stood up immediately. Eze stood up immediately. You did what? The pain on his face felt unbearable. You killed your own child, he said in a low tone. Malima collapsed to the ground, crying bitterly. I was afraid. I was foolish. I thought only about myself. Eze moved back slowly. His entire body shook in shock. For many moments, he could not speak. The woman he loved suddenly felt like a stranger. Finally, he walked away without another word. That night, Malima remained alone outside until dawn. The confession she feared for 20 years had finally escaped her lips. But instead of relief, new pain entered her life. Though he remained respectful, distance grew between them. Villagers and the maids soon noticed tension within the household. Some claimed Malima has committed terrible sins. Others said her barrenness was connected to hidden wickedness. The pressure on Malima became unbearable. One day, Edward finally spoke. You should have told me the truth long ago, Malima replied weakly. He sighed deeply. I cannot pretend your actions do not hurt me, But I also know people can change. Malima looked at him with tearful eyes. I live every day with regretting my actions. I know the dead child cannot return, Eze said. Malima wept bitterly. For the first time in many years, someone had listened to her truth completely. When it eventually reached Mr. and Mrs. Orji, the revelation shattered them instantly. Mrs. Orji cried endlessly. My own daughter! Hey! Carry such darkness alone. My own daughter hid her pregnancy from me. Hey! Mr. Orji aged visibly within weeks because of shock. He struggled to understand how the child he raised with love had become capable of such abomination. Yet his disappointment remained fatherly sorrow. When he finally visited Malima, she knelt before him in shame. Father, please forgive me. Please, Father. Mr. Orji's eye filled with tears. You broke our heart, he said quietly. But you have already spent many years punishing yourself. Malima could not stop crying. Strong, stubborn girl who once feared nobody had become a broken woman, drumming in regret. As Malima walked alone to the old bridge near her grandmother's settlement, time has weakened the wood. Parts of the bridge looked ready to collapse. She stood there for a long while, staring into the dark rushing water below. Imagine if the child will rise up from the water. That is not possible. It can never happen. Rain fell softly around her. I am sorry, she whispered into the wind. Her voice disappeared into the sound of the river. My child, please forgive me. I am not worthy to be your mother. I disappointed you. But for the first time in 20 years, Malima felt the beginning of something unfamiliar. Not forgiveness, but acceptance. She could no longer run from what she had done, and perhaps that was the first true step towards healing. After the truth became known, life in Umuike changed for Malima completely. The villagers no longer admire her beauty. Now their eyes carried pity, fear, or should I say silent judgment. Some people claim the spirit of the drum child still cried beside the bridge during the storm. Yes, it is possible. Others believe Malima's confession has awakened a curse sleeping in the waters. But there was also those who say something different. Malima has said stop caring about what people say, about the gossip, about the whispering. The burden inside her heart mattered more than the opinions of the village. Eze observed the changes in Malima quietly. Though pain still remained in his heart, but slowly he recognized the depths of Malima's regrets. He found her sitting under the tree, watching children playing nearby. They remind you of him, don't they? Eze asked gently. Malima nodded without speaking. He would have become a man now, she whispered. Eze sat beside her. Then he said quietly, you have judged yourself enough, Malima. It is right time you forgive yourself. Malima looked at him with tearful eyes. Do you hate me, Eze? No, I don't. I hate what you did, but hatred cannot build a future. Those words warmed a small corner of her wounded heart. Months passed. A big tragedy struck hard this time. Grandmother Ngozi died peacefully in her sleep. The news reached Umike at dawn. Malima collapsed upon hearing it. Despite everything, the old woman has remained the only person who fully understood the darkness she carried. Malima stood silently beside the grave, feeling another part of her life disappear forever. While the grave was covered completely, she whispered softly, thank you for not abandoning me. After the funeral, once more. The river flowed calmly beneath it. For years, she had feared this place. Now it felt strangely sacred. She knelt near the water and cried openly. I cannot change what I did, she whispered. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to become better than the woman I once was. For the first time in many years, the sound of rushing water no longer filled her with terror. Thank you very much for watching Tales by Grandma. Please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe for more interesting story. Bye bye.